Hey guys, how's it going out there? Right, so this is just a short video on non-renewable resources and the pros and cons of using them. Now, I'm sure we've done fossil fuels before in year 7 and year 9, and as some of you are hopefully aware, we also have nuclear fuels as non-renewable resources. So you know the definition, hopefully, of non-renewable resource, that when it's been used up, it cannot be used again. Okay. Example there of a nuclear fuel would be uranium. Now, this is basically me talking about the advantages and disadvantages of each of the fuels. So, in general, we have three main advantages: cheap fuel costs, generating a lot of energy, and easy to use. So, focus on these a bit to begin with. So, cheap fuel costs. So, obviously, around the world, it's being used on a daily basis, and it's an abundant source. At the minute, it's an abundant source, and therefore it's fairly cheap. When eventually it begins to run out, which it will, then the prices is going to become a lot higher. So this is obviously is not going to be an advantage anymore. All right, the next advantage here is generates a lot of energy. Because there's so much of it and we have the power stations already in place to burn these fossil fuels, then we are obviously a lot of countries around the world depend on fossil fuels for their energy, and they do generate a lot of energy now. Obviously, we're shifting a lot more towards renewable resources, but if we turned off all the non-renewable power plants around the world, we just would not be able to cope with the energy demand, especially from some of the bigger countries. And finally, it's easy to use. Okay, so like I said, this is what we've been using for the last 100 years or so. So the technology is developed, whereas modern day renewable resources, the technology for that is in its infancy. All right, so what are the disadvantages? Well, the main disadvantage, obviously, how you know, is the pollution. So CO2 and other gases, sulfur dioxide. Yeah, this leads to acid rain, global warming, and then obviously, eventually, the fuel will run out, and we can't help that. Okay, so let's focus on each of these. Now, what I'm going to do, obviously, at home, you can pause the video, you can copy these down. So I'm not going to go into too much detail right now. So these are particular for coal. All right, I'll hold it up there. Gas. Okay, sorry about the formatting here. So hopefully you can pause the video, get some of those down. And again, oil. All right, excellent. So hopefully you got some of those down. Pause the video as you went along and recorded the relevant information. So the last point I'm going to talk about is nuclear. Okay, so just so you're aware that nuclear power stations work in a similar way to coal, oil, and gas power stations. However, nuclear material is in the reactor, and that is used to heat water up in the heating tanks. Okay, and it the water turns into steam turns to turbine turns to generator, and electricity is produced. Okay, so what are the main advantages and disadvantages? Well, all I've done here is highlighted some, not really gone into as much detail as before, but you can do further research for yourself and bring it to the lesson. Well, as you can see, the first bullet point here says nuclear power has a low environmental impact and a very low accident risk. Like I said, there's only been a few cases. There was Chernobyl, which is about 30 odd years ago now. There's also the one in Japan when the earthquake hit. But apart from that, there's been very few instances. However, there's obviously a lot of negatives as well associated with it. But so we've got the high costs, the low net yield. Okay, you might have to look up what that means. Long-lived radioactive waste. So after we've used the nuclear material, it's not like we can just chuck it away. So we have to deal with it in the correct ways. Again, when it's been dealt with, how we're making sure that's secure. And obviously, there's we just have to be extremely careful when issuing or giving out nuclear material to certain countries. But the reason why we do use nuclear material is because it does produce a lot of energy for such a small amount of mass of material. Okay. Anyway, so hopefully you've made some notes down on the pros and cons of a few of those nuclear resources.